What's the craziest thing that ever happened at your school? Story 1. The day the fire alarm saved us. It was a typical Monday morning, and the school was buzzing with the usual chaos. Students were dragging their feet into class, some finishing up homework, others trying to catch up on gossip from the weekend. I was in history class when the fire alarm suddenly went off. At first, we all groaned, thinking it was just another drill, but then we noticed something strange. The teachers seemed just as surprised as we were. We filed out of the classroom, heading to the football field for the evacuation. As we waited, rumors started flying. Someone said they saw smoke coming from the science wing. Others claimed a kid set off a firework in the bathroom. But then the police arrived. It wasn't just one car. There were multiple squad cars pulling up to the front of the school, and the atmosphere quickly changed from annoyed to anxious. We later found out that one of the students had brought a weapon to school, and another kid had overheard him talking about doing something dangerous. The fire alarm had been pulled as a distraction to get everyone out of the building safely. The police arrested the student before anything could happen, and we all breathed a collective sigh of relief. It was the first time in school history that an actual threat had been neutralized thanks to a quick-thinking student. We were all a little shaken, but grateful that the day ended with nothing more than a scare. Story 2. The substitute nobody expected. It was a rainy Tuesday afternoon when our math teacher called in sick, leaving us with a substitute. Normally, subs were boring and didn't care much, but this guy was different. He walked in wearing sunglasses, a leather jacket, and carrying nothing but a stack of papers. The class was instantly intrigued. He didn't introduce himself. He just sat down, feet on the desk, and told us to do whatever we wanted. At first, we thought it was some kind of joke, but he didn't budge. After a while, the class got loud, kids throwing paper planes and laughing. Then, out of nowhere, he stood up and slammed his fist on the desk. Everyone froze. He walked to the front of the room and started scribbling complex equations on the board, faster than we could keep up. Turns out he was some kind of math genius. What made it even crazier was that halfway through the lesson, he dropped the chalk, looked at us, and said, "I'm not even supposed to be here." We all stared in confusion. Apparently, he had walked into the wrong school. He wasn't even a substitute, just some retired professor who had come to the wrong building for a guest lecture. The office called him out halfway through the class, but we all just sat there in stunned silence. To this day, nobody knows how he ended up in our room, but for one afternoon, we had the wildest math class of our lives. Story 3. The cafeteria brawl that got out of hand. It was a regular lunch period, the cafeteria loud and packed as usual. I was sitting with my friends, eating and chatting, when suddenly we heard a tray crash to the floor a few tables away. At first, it didn't seem like a big deal, just another kid who dropped their lunch. But then, we saw two guys standing up, squaring off, their voices getting louder. A fight was about to break out. Everyone stopped what they were doing to watch. It started with a shove, then another, and before anyone could react, punches were flying. The whole cafeteria erupted in chaos as people either jumped in or tried to get out of the way. What made it worse was that more kids started joining the fight, even if they weren't involved. It turned into a full-blown brawl, with tables being overturned and food flying everywhere. The noise was deafening, people screaming, chairs clattering, and teachers shouting, trying to break it up. It took a solid 5 minutes before the security guards managed to separate everyone, but by then, the cafeteria was trashed. The aftermath was wild. Several kids were suspended, a few ended up with broken noses and bruised ribs, and the school had to shut down the cafeteria for the rest of the day. It was the craziest lunch period any of us had ever seen, and the story of that brawl spread like wildfire through the entire school. Story 4. The teacher's meltdown. It started like any other day in chemistry class. Our teacher, Mr. Rogers, was always a bit intense, but that day he seemed particularly on edge. He kept pacing back and forth, muttering to himself, and none of us knew what to make of it. Halfway through the lesson, things took a turn. He suddenly stopped mid-sentence and just stared at the board, like he'd forgotten where he was. The class got quiet, and someone asked if he was okay. Without warning, he slammed his hand on the desk, knocking over a stack of papers. Everyone jumped, and that's when he lost it. He started yelling at us, calling us lazy, saying we'd never amount to anything, and that we were wasting his time. His face turned red, and you could tell he was on the verge of completely breaking down. Some kids tried to leave, but he blocked the door and wouldn't let anyone out. It was surreal. This man who had always been so controlled was unraveling right in front of us. Finally, another teacher must have heard the commotion and came in to intervene. They pulled Mr. Rogers out of the classroom, but the damage was done. For weeks, all anyone could talk about was the meltdown. He didn't come back after that day, and we later found out that he had been dealing with a lot of personal issues. It was the first time any of us had seen a teacher completely lose control like that, and it left a lasting impression on the entire school. Story 5. The day the principal got arrested. Our school was always pretty uneventful, so when the principal got arrested, it became the biggest scandal in years. Mr. Thompson was well liked by most of the students, always smiling and cracking jokes during assemblies. He was the kind of principal who seemed to know everyone by name, which made what happened even more shocking. One morning, just before classes started, a couple of police cars pulled up right in front of the school. At first, we thought maybe there was a safety drill or some sort of special event, but then we saw two officers walking straight into the main office. A few minutes later, they came out with Mr. Thompson in handcuffs. The entire school went silent as everyone stared, trying to make sense of it. Teachers quickly tried to usher us into our classrooms, but by then, the whispers were flying. It turned out that Mr. Thompson had been involved in some shady financial dealings outside of school, and he was being charged with embezzlement. The news spread like wildfire, not just through our school, but across the entire town. By lunchtime, every student knew the details. The rest of the day felt surreal. None of us could believe our easygoing, friendly principal was in that kind of trouble. He never came back to school after that, and a new principal was brought in, but the story of Mr. Thompson's arrest is still talked about to this day. Story 6. The senior prank that went too far. Every year, the seniors at our school pulled off some kind of prank, usually something harmless, like covering the hallways in balloons or plastic wrapping the principal's car. But my senior year, things got out of hand. A group of seniors decided to go big and pulled a prank no one would ever forget. They broke into the school late at night and released 3 live pigs into the building. The next morning when we arrived, chaos was already in full swing. Teachers were scrambling, the janitors were chasing the pigs around, and students were standing on desks, laughing and taking videos. It was funny at first, but then things took a darker turn. One of the pigs ended up getting stuck in a classroom, and by the time the janitors managed to free it, the poor thing was hurt. That's when the jokes stopped being funny. The school administration was furious, and the group behind the prank was quickly caught. They didn't just face suspension, they were also charged with animal cruelty, and one of them even got expelled. The entire senior class got lectured about responsibility, and the usual end-of-year pranks were banned from then on. What started as a lighthearted joke ended with serious consequences, and it's still remembered as the year the prank went way too far. Story 7. The talent show that turned into a fight. Our school's annual talent show was usually a fun event, a chance for students to show off their hidden skills. But one year, things took a wild turn no one saw coming. It started off as usual, with singers, dancers, and a few kids doing comedy routines. Everything was going smoothly until 2 students, who were part of a dance crew, started arguing backstage just before their performance. Apparently, one of them had messed up the choreography during rehearsals, and the other guy wasn't happy about it. The argument spilled onto the stage. At first, the audience thought it was part of the act, but within seconds, punches were being thrown. The whole auditorium erupted as teachers rushed to break up the fight. The rest of the talent show was canceled, and the 2 students were taken to the principal's office. The story spread across the school like wildfire, and everyone was talking about how a simple talent show turned into a full-blown brawl. Both students were suspended, and the talent show was never quite the same after that. What was supposed to be a fun night turned into one of the most chaotic events our school had ever seen. Story 8. The day the science lab exploded. It was just another day in chemistry class, and we were working on a group experiment involving some basic reactions. Our teacher, Mr. Howard, was known for pushing the boundaries a little when it came to experiments, always trying to make them more exciting. That day, he decided to demonstrate a chemical reaction none of us had ever seen before. He didn't give us much detail, just set up the experiment while explaining the safety precautions. Everything was going fine until something went terribly wrong. The chemicals reacted way more violently than expected, and suddenly there was a loud bang. The entire room shook as glass beakers shattered and a cloud of smoke filled the lab. We all panicked and ran for the door, coughing and covering our faces. Mr. Howard was yelling for us to stay calm, but even he looked freaked out. The fire alarm went off, and the entire school had to be evacuated. Outside, everyone was talking about how the science lab had literally exploded. Thankfully, no one was seriously hurt, but the lab was completely destroyed. The administration wasn't happy, and Mr. Howard was placed on leave for the rest of the year. From then on, the school was a lot stricter about what could and couldn't be done in the science labs. Story 9. The mascot kidnapping. Our school was known for its fierce sports rivalry with the neighboring high school, and every year the tension would build leading up to the big football game. But one year, things went way too far. It all started when a group of students from our rival school snuck onto our campus late at night and kidnapped our beloved school mascot costume, a giant eagle that had been part of every game for decades. The next morning, rumors spread like wildfire. Our mascot was missing and no one knew who was behind it. That is, until a video surfaced online of the rival school's students parading around in our eagle costume, mocking us. Our school went into full revenge mode. A group of seniors took it upon themselves to rescue the mascot, and by the end of the week, they had devised a plan. They broke into the rival school's gym, and in the middle of their pep rally, unfurled a huge banner that read, "We'll take back what's ours." Along with that, they managed to snatch the eagle costume back in front of the entire rival student body. The stunt didn't go unnoticed by school officials, and both schools ended up getting in serious trouble. Several students were suspended, and the football game was played without any mascots that year. It became one of the most legendary moments in our school's rivalry history, but also the last time anyone messed with the mascot. Story 10, the senior skip day gone wrong. Senior skip day was always one of those unspoken traditions. Every year, the seniors would plan a day to ditch school and go somewhere fun. Normally, it was harmless, with students heading to the beach or the park to celebrate being close to graduation. But my year, things didn't go as planned. A group of seniors decided to make the day memorable by going to an abandoned water park outside of town. It was supposed to be a fun day of exploring, taking pictures, and hanging out. What no one expected was for the police to show up. Apparently, the park wasn't as deserted as everyone thought, and someone had called the cops when they saw a bunch of kids breaking in. The seniors tried to run, but a few of them were caught. They were taken to the station and had to call their parents to come pick them up. News of the bust spread quickly, and by the time everyone else got back to school the next day, the administration was already aware of what had happened. The students who were caught faced suspensions, and the rest of the senior class got a stern lecture about responsibility. What was supposed to be a day of fun ended with a lot of kids grounded, and one very memorable lesson in why you shouldn't trespass even for senior skip day.